Hi, my name is Eleora. I was sent to a reform school at 17, not because I broke the law, but because I told the truth. I told my mother it was my sister who stole from me, and she looked me dead in the eye and said, "This house only has one daughter." No one stopped her, not even my sister. She erased me, on paper, in family photos, in the school system. My dad didn't know, but when he found out, he divorced her. You ever wonder what it feels like to be erased by the people who raised you? To be punished not for lying, but for refusing to? That's what happened to me. And that's just the beginning. In my family, being forgotten wasn't loud. It was a quiet deletion. There were no shouting matches or doors slammed in rage. No, the sharpest wounds came from silence, from the subtle exclusion that felt so practiced it might as well have been intentional. That night, at Zinnia's birthday dinner, I sat at the edge of a long dining table in our Fort Worth home, watching everyone pass dishes and compliments like I was a piece of furniture. I had planned the whole thing: reservations, decorations, even the menu to fit Mom's low-sodium diet. And yet, as the cake came out, it confirmed what I was beginning to accept. There was one name on the cake: hers. I leaned over slightly and asked, just loud enough for Mom to hear, "Did the bakery forget to add my name?" She didn't look up, just said flatly, "No, I told them to write Zinnia's name only. It's not about everyone." Zinnia gave a soft shrug, eyes not leaving her phone. "It's fine, Mom. I mean, it is my birthday." I bit the inside of my cheek and nodded. "Sure," I said, more to myself than anyone else. I couldn't remember the last time my name had been on a cake. Maybe when I was 10, back when Dad still lived with us and insisted on ordering it himself. Since then, birthdays had been quiet affairs, or skipped altogether. After the dinner, while everyone wandered into the living room with slices of cake, I stayed behind to clear the table. When I joined them, I noticed a large framed photo hanging above the fireplace. It was new, a family portrait from last Christmas. Mom, Zinnia, my aunt, and our dog Max. I had been there that day. I remembered it vividly, mostly because I had offered to take the photo for them. They never asked me to be in it. "Nice picture," I said, doing my best to sound casual. Mom looked up, smiling briefly. "Oh, that? Yeah, we had it framed a few weeks ago. You weren't really dressed for it that day, remember? I didn't want the frame to look messy." I stared at her for a moment, then at the picture again. Zinnia's smile was perfect. Mom's posture, composed. Everyone belonged. Everyone but me. I didn't argue. What was there to say? My absence wasn't accidental. It was edited. I excused myself and went to my room, shutting the door softly behind me. The weight in my chest wasn't new. It had been growing slowly, over years of similar moments. School awards no one showed up for. College prep sessions skipped because Mom had errands. When I got my first job at 16, I had to take the bus. Zinnia, at 15, got a car. This wasn't about the cake. It wasn't about the photo. It was the realization that those were just the latest entries in a long list of quiet rejections. They used to say I was the responsible one, the strong daughter, the one who didn't need as much attention. I wore that title like armor for years, until it started feeling like a label slapped on a shelf they didn't bother to dust. Sometimes I wondered if they even noticed I was pulling away. I stopped volunteering to help at family events, stopped offering to drive Zinnia to her appointments. I became quiet, not out of peace, but preservation. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling through old photos I had saved to my phone. There were barely any with all of us in them, and the ones that did include me? I was always at the edge of the frame, half smiling, half faded. "You know what hurts more than being screamed at?" I whispered to no one. "Being ignored like you never mattered in the first place." To anyone watching, we were a normal family, a single mom who worked hard, 2 daughters, one a little rebellious, the other responsible. But behind that image was a dynamic that could drain the soul: the golden child and the scapegoat. Zinnia got grace. I got expectations. And if I failed to meet them, I was labeled ungrateful. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not alone. If you're over 60 and watching this, maybe you've raised a family. Maybe you had favorites, even unintentionally. Or maybe, like me, you were the one who always did more and still got less. If you've ever been called dramatic for asking to be seen, if you've ever wondered why you're the one holding everything together while being left out of the group photo, this story is for you. Because I see you. I was you. As the lights in the hallway dimmed and the house grew quiet, I found myself standing at the edge of the living room again. The cake was half eaten. The photo still hung, proud and perfect. I looked at them both, my name missing in each. If they keep cutting me out of the picture, I whispered, maybe I should stop trying to stand in frame. The Saturday after Zinnia's birthday, I sat on the edge of my bed with a mug of lukewarm coffee and opened my bank app. Not because I expected a miracle, just habit. I had been saving since I was 16. Babysitting, tutoring, selling secondhand books, anything to build a future I could call mine. That morning, the number on the screen hit me like a slap. A withdrawal of $3,800, labeled Family Emergency. I blinked twice, refreshed the app, as if that would undo the damage. That account wasn't just money. It was my college application fees, my down payment on independence. The label stung more than the missing balance. Family emergency. Funny how my emergencies never seem to count. By midday, I had paced around the kitchen, enough to wear the floor thin. Mom was sorting mail near the counter when I asked, as directly and calmly as I could manage, "Did you take money from my college account?" She didn't even look up. "Don't accuse your sister. That money came from our family. We can use it when needed." I paused. "I'm not accusing. I'm asking." Zinnia wandered in, holding her phone and half a granola bar. "Oh, I thought Mom told you. I needed it for therapy. Dr. Benson raised her rates. I swear I thought it was cleared." "You thought?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice even. "Yeah, she said she'd talk to you." Zinnia shrugged, popped the last bite into her mouth, and left the room like we'd just discussed what movie to watch. I didn't respond. My mouth wanted to argue, but my body stood still, absorbing the blow. I waited until Monday to walk into the bank. The teller, a young guy named Josh, who looked like he still lived off frozen pizza and bad decisions, greeted me with a smile that faltered when I asked about the withdrawal. He typed, clicked, paused. "Looks like..." "Yeah. A secondary card was issued 3 months ago, linked to your account. Usage approved under the sub-account holder settings." I stared. "I never requested a secondary card." Josh glanced at the screen. "Says here your mother signed for it. She's the primary on the custodial account. You're listed under access." I let out a quiet breath. "So, I was the name and she was the access?" He nodded, not quite understanding the weight behind that confirmation. I thanked him and left. The folder he printed for me sat heavy in my bag. Every transaction felt like a betrayal in black ink. Groceries, gas, therapy, Starbucks. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I documented. That night, I opened a fresh folder on my laptop, titled, Proof. I began saving everything. Screenshots, emails, timestamps, receipts. I started recording conversations at home, small audio files that slipped into the cloud unnoticed. I've learned that people who are silenced often become archivists. We collect the truth, not for revenge, but for clarity. At least, that's what I told myself. But clarity can be cold. It doesn't hold you when you shake. It doesn't call your name when the family photo is being taken. By Wednesday, I had printed out the withdrawal logs. I spread them across my bed and just looked at them, like puzzle pieces of a betrayal I already knew by heart. One line stood out. Zinnia's Uber ride to a yoga retreat labeled as wellness recovery. It cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I remembered a time in middle school when she borrowed my hoodie and never returned it. "It's just a sweatshirt," she said back then. Now it was just $3,800. I didn't want to fight with emotion. Emotion was their language. I wanted the facts, numbers, names, dates. I wanted to confront them with clarity so sharp it would cut through every excuse. I tucked the papers into a binder. I made backups. I saved voice notes to an encrypted drive. This wasn't paranoia. This was protection. I passed Zinnia in the hallway that night. She smiled. "You're quiet lately." "Just focusing," I said. Not a lie. Just not the kind of focus she thought. She walked off humming some Taylor Swift song about revenge and glitter. I looked at her like I was seeing her for the first time. The girl who had borrowed everything, my clothes, my space, my peace, and now, my name. She used my name to take my future. That's not borrowing, that's identity theft. 2 days after the bank visit, I sat in the passenger seat of Mom's car, legs tucked beneath me, like I used to do as a kid when I wanted to disappear. The sun burned through the windshield as she hummed along to a song I didn't recognize, tapping the steering wheel like this was just another errand on just another day. We were headed to my school to finalize the AP scholarship paperwork, something I had applied for, worked toward, and earned. It should have felt like a win. Instead, I couldn't shake the growing sense that I was being led into something I hadn't agreed to. At the front office, the woman behind the desk smiled briefly and reached for a folder. "You must be Callista." I paused, confused. "I think you meant Eleora." The woman blinked. "No, it says Callista here. Callista Morgan. That's the name your mother filled out." My heart didn't sink. It stalled. I turned toward Mom. She gave that practiced chuckle she used when servers got her order wrong, and she wanted to seem gracious. "Simple typo," she said, patting my shoulder. "You know how forms are." I didn't respond, because I knew this wasn't a form issue. It was a pattern. As we moved through the process, I glanced at the paperwork. There were other forms, class registration, student ID renewals, all under Zinnia's name, attached to my ID number. My records were merging into hers. My identity, slowly diluted into someone else's convenience. Back at home, that night, the house was dim. Zinnia was out, and Mom was on the phone in the kitchen. I paused in the hallway, halfway to the stairs. Her voice was low, casual. Too casual. "She's just exhausting, Renee. I can't rely on her. Zinnia has always been the dependable one. That girl never makes a fuss. I need someone who doesn't make everything about herself." The words didn't sting like an insult. They landed like a verdict, one she had clearly repeated before. This wasn't just how she felt. This was what she believed. About me. I stood there, not breathing, not blinking, listening to my own mother rationalize my erasure like it was housekeeping. Upstairs, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I began pulling documents, school emails, grade reports, scholarship applications, and created a folder titled E. Nothing dramatic, just that single letter. Inside, I dropped screenshots, printed forms, anything where my name had been changed or omitted. I added audio files, casual conversations recorded on my phone, not for spite, but for truth. They don't see what I do. They only see what I haven't done wrong. I remembered something a documentary filmmaker once said. When the record is altered, history loses its witness. I refused to let that happen. The next day, I printed out corrected versions of the school forms, my name at the top in bold, centered, indisputable. I tucked them into the back of my binder, made copies for my locker, uploaded backups to a hidden cloud drive. This wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. I grabbed a blank journal from my dresser drawer and, with deliberate pressure, wrote one sentence on the inside cover. "My name is Eleora. I was here. I mattered." I looked at the words until they stopped shaking on the page. Then I closed the book and slid it under my pillow. Dinner that night was uneventful. Mom asked Zinnia about her Pilates class. No one mentioned the scholarship forms. No one looked at me. I watched their mouths move, their forks clink against plates. I watched the world turn without my name in it. They wouldn't say it? Fine. If my name disappears from their mouths, I'll etch it somewhere they can't erase. It was a Thursday evening when Mom casually mentioned, "We're hosting dinner tomorrow night. Your cousin Mitchell is in town for a few days." She didn't look up from the kitchen calendar she was scribbling on. "Don't overdress. It's just family." Just family. That phrase did more damage than she ever realized. I nodded, said nothing, and retreated upstairs where my laptop still sat open with half a dozen tabs related to college housing. The thought of bringing it up felt ridiculous. That night, I didn't bother mentioning the scholarship forms or the error she never corrected. I had learned my place, invisible, but expected to be gracious about it. By 6 the next evening, the house was filled with the smell of garlic bread and lemon chicken. Voices bounced from room to room as relatives began arriving. I stayed in the background, helping carry drink trays and wiping the same spotless countertop just to keep busy. No one noticed, or maybe they did and chose not to mention it. When it was time to sit down, I hovered behind the chairs for a second, eyes scanning the dining table. 10 people, 9 chairs. "Is there another?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Zinnia, already seated next to Mitchell, smirked. "I think Mom thought you'd be eating in your room anyway." I blinked, stunned for a second, but didn't move. Before I could process it fully, Mom glanced up from pouring wine and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Let your sister sit. You're always so sensitive. You can grab a plate after." Aunt Trish shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Kyle cleared his throat, but no one said anything. And why would they? I'd become the family's casual punchline, the girl who took things too personally. I stood there a beat too long, cheeks burning, before backing away and heading toward the kitchen. I didn't slam anything. I didn't cry. I just plated my food like a guest in someone else's home and ate in silence at the island. After dinner, I waited until the house settled before heading to my room. I needed to shut the world out, even if for just a moment. But when I reached for the doorknob, it wouldn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I knocked. No response. My heart thudded. I knocked harder. A few minutes later, Zinnia appeared from the hallway bathroom with a toothbrush in her mouth. "Oh, Mom said I could use your room this weekend. I've got exams, and it's quieter." "What?" My voice was a whisper that tried to sound like a demand. She shrugged. "You weren't really using it lately. It made more sense." Later, Marjorie confirmed it without a blink. "It's only temporary. You're always downstairs or out anyway. It's just more efficient this way." So I grabbed a pillow from the hall closet and settled on the couch. No blanket, no privacy, no space that was mine. I stared at the ceiling, the dull hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Being pushed aside in private had always stung, but tonight made something clearer. When the cruelty goes public, when it's normalized, that's when you understand it was never a misunderstanding. It was a message. I remembered a line from a podcast. When abuse is quiet, you start thinking you're imagining it. When it's public, you realize you were taught to be silent. That night, I took photos of the empty chair, of the locked door, of my folded clothes on the hallway bench. Not because I thought anyone would care, because I needed to remember it all. I wrote a letter to myself in a notebook I hadn't touched in months. The first page read, "If they cut your seat, carve your own table, even if it's just a fold-out one in the garage." That sentence stayed with me as I began backing up everything from my home laptop. Every email, every form, every text I had saved into a hidden folder, now duplicated to an external drive. Because at some point, this wouldn't just be about pain, it would be about proof. That night, I wasn't just left without a chair. I was told I no longer had a place at the table. I didn't say a word for 2 days, not out of defeat, but because I needed to collect everything. If they were going to keep rewriting the story, I was going to hand them the original, word for word, line by line. I gathered screenshots from my bank account, school correspondence, and those candid photos of the empty chair at dinner. I printed the email trail, where I tried to fix my own scholarship forms. I even included the picture of Zinnia's belongings, stacked in what used to be my room. The binder was thick, ugly, and full of truth. On Saturday morning, I waited until Zinnia left for yoga, and Marjorie finished her second cup of coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the one with the water ring that never came out and the wobble no one ever fixed. "I need to talk," I said. She glanced up from her phone. "This early?" I opened the binder and slid it across the table. "This is the bank statement," I began. "Here's the school's paperwork, the one with Zinnia's name and my ID. And this is the photo from Mitchell's dinner. 9 people, 8 chairs. Guess which one wasn't invited to sit?" Marjorie didn't touch the binder. Her face barely changed. She flipped her phone over on the table and sighed, like I'd interrupted a very important text. "Eleora," she said in that voice reserved for complaints about grocery clerks, "you really need to stop creating drama. You're exhausting." "I'm not being dramatic," I replied, calm, steady. "I'm being replaced. And I won't go quietly." She didn't respond. That silence? That wasn't ignorance. It was indifference. 3 days later, I got pulled from class by the school counselor. Her voice was too polite, too rehearsed. "Your mother submitted a behavioral concern form," she explained. "She's requesting support from the district. There's an early referral packet we'd like you to review." She handed me a slim folder. Inside, brochures, a letterhead, and a printed application for something called Transitional Residential Academy. I read the line aloud. "A specialized program for adolescents struggling with emotional regulation and family structure." "You think I belong there?" I asked, not angry, just stunned. She hesitated. "We're not making any decisions yet. This is just exploratory. But the concerns raised were consistent." Consistent. That was her word for betrayal. At home, things grew quieter. Not peaceful, just eerily silent. My laptop, which used to connect to the Wi-Fi automatically, now flashed authentication failed. My phone, once unrestricted, was suddenly under parental controls. I couldn't download apps, couldn't send photos, couldn't access my own email. I noticed the family group chat, once filled with passive-aggressive updates, was missing from my phone altogether. I hadn't been blocked. I had been removed. Exile doesn't always start with a slammed door. Sometimes it begins with a silent disconnect. That night, I sat at the dining table, the same one where my seat had been denied. I wrote a note and folded it neatly into the back of my binder. It read, "Family isn't blood. Family is who sees you, even when you're invisible." The next day, I visited Ms. Raymond, my history teacher, during lunch. I told her I might need a letter of recommendation soon, just in case I had to transfer. She didn't ask questions. She handed me a granola bar, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Whatever you need." Back at home, I began copying everything, files, photos, documents, onto an external hard drive I had hidden inside a shoebox under my bed. Not because I planned to leave right away, but because if they pushed me out, I wouldn't walk out empty-handed. They thought silence would shut me down. But this silence gave me volume. A week after that meeting in the kitchen, the one where I handed her proof, and she handed me silence, I was called to the counselor's office during 4th period. I assumed it had something to do with the college planning session I'd requested. Maybe the school had received my scholarship corrections. Maybe someone was finally going to say, "We see you." What I got instead was a manila folder. "Eleora," Ms. Crowley said, her voice tight, "your mother submitted a non-voluntary transfer request to the district for a reform program." I looked at the label on the front. Transitional Placement Initiative. Beneath it, a single line. Behavioral reassignment. I blinked. "I came here for chemistry class," I said, my voice low. "Not a courtroom I didn't know I was on trial in." She looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Your mother cited escalating emotional instability, refusal to participate in family counseling, and risk to household dynamics." Household dynamics. That's what they were calling neglect now. Before I could form a response, the door opened. Marjorie stepped in, calm as a Sunday brunch. "I thought it was important I be here for this," she said, setting her purse down like she was settling in for coffee. She turned to the staff and smiled. "She's no longer manageable in our home. I've tried therapy, I've tried reasoning, but she lies, she resists structure, and frankly, she undermines everything I try to keep stable." When I tried to speak, her eyes cut to mine, sharp, full of quiet warning. She didn't have to say, "Be quiet." Her tone had trained me for years. And then, turning back to Miss Crowley, she said it. Flat, calm, deliberate. "This house only has one daughter." The room went still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick more cautiously. I saw the counselor hesitate, just for a breath, but then she nodded and began flipping through the file. No one asked me if I had anything to say. They just handed me another envelope. Inside were intake forms, a schedule for orientation, and a contact sheet for the residential advisor at the facility. I wasn't even allowed to return home to pack. "We'll hold her here until the transfer's processed," the school administrator told Marjorie over the phone. "Yes, I'll make sure she has what she needs." After the call ended, I sat alone in the guidance waiting room, trying to steady my hands. My phone vibrated once. Zinnia. Her message was 2 sentences. "Don't be dramatic. You'll be fine." I didn't reply. The front desk was empty. Behind it sat a file cabinet. Something poked out of the middle drawer, an unwrapped package, worn at the corners. My name was on the tag, barely legible under dust. I pulled it out, heart thudding. It was a book, hardback, familiar. The cover was bent, the spine cracked. Inside, a note folded in half. It was Dad's handwriting. "No matter where you are, keep your head high. I believe in you." My breath caught before I realized I was crying. Not sobbing, not broken, just leaking. The kind of tears that come from a dam finally, mercifully giving way. Someone still saw me. I slipped the note into my pocket and closed the book. Whatever came next, I'd carry his words with me. That afternoon, they moved me to a temporary holding room near the nurse's office. No one said goodbye. No one asked if I needed anything. I stared out the window at a world still spinning. Inside, I made a silent promise. If they send me away, I'll come back stronger. Not for them, for me. I didn't pack a bag, but they packed a sentence for me, and I was expected to serve it without appeal. The transport van rolled up a dusty, unpaved road just outside Dallas. The driver didn't speak beyond the mandatory instructions. "Sit down, no phones, this won't take long." He wasn't rude, just detached, like someone who had learned the less he knew, the less he'd care. We pulled up to a brick building with barred windows and paint that looked like it gave up 10 years ago. A sign above the gate read, "Transitional Residential Academy." It sounded more like a nursing home than a place where teenagers were deposited when their parents ran out of excuses. Inside, it smelled of lemon disinfectant and hopelessness. The intake officer didn't make eye contact. "We don't get many voluntary check-ins," she mumbled, stapling a packet. I wanted to ask if that made me special or just irrelevant, but I said nothing. I wasn't sent here to change. I was sent here to disappear. 3 days in, we were allowed one call. I waited in line behind a girl with a shaved head and a boy who muttered poetry under his breath. When it was my turn, I gave the number to the attendant, hoping for Dad, maybe even Aunt Renee. The phone rang once. "Hey," Zinnia chirped. "Just calling to say, hope you're having fun in your little mental boot camp. Don't mess it up. Mom's reputation depends on it." I didn't hang up immediately. I let her voice sit there, as fake and brittle as a cheap perfume. Then I clicked the receiver down with a calmness I didn't feel. The phone trembled in my grip. Not from fear. From fury I hadn't let touch the surface. That night, I met Soren. She sat across from me in the cafeteria, balancing a fork on her finger like she was bored of gravity. "You're not crazy," she said without preamble. "You're convenient. That's why you're here." I blinked. Parents like yours don't want solutions. They want silence. They drop you here so they don't have to explain you. I stared. I've been here 6 months, she went on. Girl from Garland. Her stepdad said she was difficult. What he meant was she knew too much. You learn fast. They don't send you here because you're broken. They send you here because they are. Later that night, after lights out, I lay in my bunk and started journaling. Not with my name, not with dates. Just code names, patterns, things I observed. A boy who scratched his wrist when staff walked by. A girl who cried during group therapy but smiled after. A staff member who forgot names but remembered control. I wrote on the first page, "They didn't send me here to heal, so I'll survive to remember." By the end of the week, I had filled 15 pages. Not thoughts, data, not feelings, facts. I started noticing which hall cameras blinked red and which never lit at all. I memorized the names of caseworkers and the timing of their rotations. I wasn't breaking. I was documenting. One night, Soren slipped into my room with a flash drive hidden inside a hollowed-out pen. "Back up everything here," she said. "Don't trust the cloud. They monitor everything." I nodded, copied over my photos, Zinnia's text messages, screenshots of Mom's paperwork, audio clips of phone calls. I hid the drive in the sole of my sneaker. "You're not just a file number," she whispered. "Make them regret thinking you were." I didn't cry. Not then. That kind of strength was for later. You sent me here thinking I'd vanish. I'll walk out with evidence. They locked the gates, but they didn't know I had already started unlocking every lie. The letter from the school administration came tucked inside a manila envelope labeled Progress Review. It was supposed to be a formality, just an update on my behavior and adjustment. But for me, it was something else. An opportunity. That afternoon, I requested access to the computer lab, citing an academic project for reintegration planning. The staff, either too disinterested or too overworked to question it, approved. I sat in front of the outdated desktop, heart racing beneath my calm expression. I logged into the secure cloud I'd set up weeks before leaving home. Everything was still there, my digital lifeline, screenshots of withdrawal records, emails from the school with altered names, recordings, photos, receipts of a life edited without my consent. Without attaching my name, I composed an email, addressed to my father. No, "Hi, Dad." No small talk, just a subject line. "If you ever wondered why I stopped speaking, this is why." I attached the folder, dozens of files, each labeled clearly. Then I hit send, and I sat back. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't watch the inbox. I didn't cry. I let it go. 2 days passed. On the third morning, just after breakfast, a staff member approached me during kitchen duty. "Eliora, you're needed in the front office." I wiped my hands on a paper towel and followed her through the hallway. As we reached the front entrance, I saw the car parked outside, a black Lincoln with tinted windows. Not government, not rental, personal. Inside the office stood Benedict, my father. He didn't smile. He didn't look angry. He looked resolved. He held a leather folder, the kind attorneys always carry. "I received your email," he said. "I believe you. We're going to fix this." That was all he said. The meeting with the director was called within the hour. Benedict requested it, and they couldn't refuse. I sat beside him in a plastic chair, watching him take control of the room with calm authority. "My daughter was placed here under false pretenses," he began. "There is clear documentation of parental manipulation, forged financial activity, and educational sabotage." As he spoke, the room shifted. Staff who had once looked through me now leaned in. Faces tightened. Pens scribbled faster. The program director kept glancing at the folder in Benedict's lap. I watched quietly. When power walks in wearing silence, systems start to shake. After he finished, the director turned to me. For the first time, I was invited to speak. I didn't raise my voice. I raised facts. I listed dates, explained changes in academic records, described how I had been removed from my room, my school, my family photo, and eventually from my legal identity. When I finished, I didn't wait for their sympathy. "They didn't send me here because I was wrong," I said, steady. "They sent me here because I was inconvenient." The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was shifting, recalculating. That afternoon, Benedict and I sat outside on the bench by the parking lot. He handed me a bottle of water and said nothing for a few minutes. Then, without turning his head, he said, "You're not the one who failed here." 7 words. That was it. But those words rearranged everything I thought I knew about abandonment. The office was colder than usual, colder in temperature, and colder still in tone. You could feel it in the air the moment you stepped off the elevator. The downtown firm Benedict had chosen for the meeting reeked of money and meticulous control. High glass walls, polished concrete floors, a conference table too sleek to touch, and chairs designed more for intimidation than comfort. Everything was curated to remind you that emotion had no place here. He insisted on neutral ground. I knew why. The mediator sat at the head of the table, flipping through a yellow legal pad with an air of practiced detachment, as if we were all just numbers in a ledger waiting to be balanced. She didn't look up when Marjorie arrived, 15 minutes late and entirely unbothered, her coat draped over one arm like she'd just stepped out of a spa rather than into a confrontation. Zinnia trailed behind her, quieter, holding her phone like it might shield her from what was coming. I sat beside Benedict. He didn't say anything at first. He opened his leather folder with mechanical precision, like someone unfolding a weapon they'd spent months assembling. Page by page, he built a small paper wall between us and them. Each document made a soft thap against the table, but the sound cut sharper than anything spoken. "These," he said, voice low and clipped, "are her emails. These are bank statements detailing unauthorized withdrawals over the last 16 months. These are the altered academic records submitted in her name. And this," he lifted one sheet as if it were a crown jewel, "is the original transfer request to St. Haven's Reform Institute, signed by you." His eyes met Marjorie's. She didn't blink. "She was disrupting the family structure," she said, as if reading from a memo she'd written herself. Benedict's jaw tightened. "You didn't just send her away. You didn't just remove her. You rewrote her." Zinnia stirred. Her voice was softer than I remembered. "Mom, I didn't know she'd be sent there." Marjorie said nothing. Her mouth flattened into a line so thin it could slice glass. It was my turn. I inhaled and leaned forward, folding my hands in front of me, not for composure, but to still the shaking. I spoke with no anger, just facts. Cold, precise, irrefutable. Dates, times, locations, conversations, voicemails, screenshots. I outlined what I witnessed, what I preserved. What they didn't know, I'd saved. "You taught me how to stay silent," I said finally, meeting Marjorie's eyes. "So now I'm going to show you what silence preserved." This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about preservation, of truth, of memory, of identity, of myself. The mediator paused her note-taking. She turned slightly toward Benedict. "This qualifies for a preliminary custody revision and an emergency injunction. We'll need to notify the court within 24 hours. There it was. A small tremor broke through Marjorie's practiced stillness. Her hands curled slightly around the armrests. Her fingers clenched. Zinnia stared down at the table, not saying a word, her screen finally dark. I didn't flinch. I had flinched enough for a lifetime. Benedict, calm as ever, reached into the folder one last time and pulled out a single sheet. It looked different. The formatting was cleaner. The font was smaller. The seal in the corner, official. "This," he said, sliding it toward the mediator, "is a withdrawal form from Eleora's scholarship trust, Large sum. Immediate transfer. Signature required. He looked at Marjorie. Only it's not her signature. The mediator took the document and scanned it briefly. Her brow arched. This is forged. Even Marjorie's attorney, silent until now, shifted in his seat. You could see it, the subtle change. The careful distance lawyers begin to place between themselves and a client they know can't be protected anymore. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. That single piece of paper spoke louder than I ever could. It didn't yell. It didn't accuse. It exposed. They stared at the document, at the truth, at what could no longer be rewritten or suppressed. And for once, just once, it was them who had nothing left to say. I let the silence sit. Let it do what silence always did best. Reveal. 2 weeks after that day in the attorney's office, Benedict's home in Austin turned into a quiet war room. His home office was no longer just where he handled contracts or read the paper. It now held copies of court filings, financial affidavits, and a stack of documents thicker than the silence that had lived in our family for years. He'd filed for divorce. Officially. The claim? Parental manipulation, emotional abuse. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't dance around the language. For the first time, someone called it what it was, and put it in writing. The custody reevaluation came next, and with it, a demand for financial compensation from Marjorie for the misuse of my scholarship fund. I watched him explain the case to his attorney with the same measured tone he used to explain tax law to clients, detailed, unwavering, and irrefutable. Marjorie, however, wasn't going to disappear quietly. A week after the papers were served, she posted a long, rambling Facebook status. It was public. It's hard, she wrote, when your own child turns on you because they can't handle truth. I did everything to keep this family together. Sometimes love isn't enough for the ungrateful. The post got traction, but not the kind she wanted. Comments appeared within minutes, many from accounts I didn't recognize. That doesn't match what's in the screenshots. Didn't she forge her daughter's name? She stole from a college fund and still wants sympathy? Someone even reposted the scanned signature next to my actual one. Her version looked like a kindergarten tracing attempt. My hands didn't shake when I read the thread, but my jaw tightened with a satisfaction I didn't fully trust. She weaponized the world, but it didn't shield her from truth. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. I let it unfold naturally. Then came Zinnia. She didn't call. She didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, I got a message that buzzed on my screen during breakfast. You made Mom look like a monster. Hope you're happy. I read it twice. Then I typed back. I didn't make her anything. I just stopped covering for her. And that was it. The last message I ever sent to my sister. There was no fight, no drama. Just the closing of a door I'd stood in front of far too long. That afternoon, Benedict handed me a thick envelope. Inside were the final divorce papers. It's done, he said. Legally, anyway. We sat on the back porch, sunlight fading into evening. The wind carried the scent of mesquite and old memory. I stayed quiet too long, he admitted, eyes fixed on the horizon. We both did, I replied. I saw it then, not just as something we lived through, but something we had been conditioned to allow. Silence was a family heirloom we'd passed down without thinking, until someone finally refused to keep it. Despite all this, I didn't feel victorious. Not really. No part of me wanted to celebrate, because justice doesn't taste like champagne, it tastes like ash, bitter, necessary, and dry in the mouth. Later that night, I deleted Marjorie's number from my phone. Not in anger, in finality. I watched the little contact card disappear. I didn't cry. Sometimes winning doesn't feel like victory. It feels like you just stopped losing. Justice didn't hug me, but it stood beside me when no one else would. A full month had passed since the court finalized everything. Custody, divorce, restitution. It was all done, officially. The documents sat in a thick manila folder, filled with stamped pages, notarized signatures, and a weight that couldn't be measured in paper. Names were named, dates recorded, wrongs validated by the gavel's fall. But no one ever tells you, the real work starts after the verdict. Benedict's place wasn't just a house. It was foreign terrain. There were no heavy silences laced with suspicion, no sideways glances keeping score. The quiet here was different. It didn't accuse or wait to erupt. It gave space. Space to think, to breathe, to just be. No one demanded justification for opening the fridge or asked why I wasn't smiling enough. There were no traps hidden in polite questions. I used to mistake silence for punishment, for being invisible. Now I understood something far deeper. Silence can be a choice, a reclaiming, a sanctuary. Afternoons became rituals of reclaiming pieces of myself. I applied to schools, not ones someone else picked, but ones I believed in. I combed through my credit reports, marking errors, fixing them one by one. No cosigners, no shared bank accounts. I was starting from zero, but at least this zero was mine. Every Tuesday morning, I went to therapy. I hadn't spoken in the first few sessions, just sat there, arms crossed, counting the seconds until I could leave. But this week was different. Something cracked. My parents sent me to reform school, I told Dr. Malin, voice uneven but steady. But it wasn't that place that broke me. It was the silence around it, the way no one questioned it, the way everyone just let it happen. She didn't jump in to soothe me. She just nodded, letting the words settle. Then she said softly, "Surviving what you went through is powerful, but choosing not to carry that pain for everyone else anymore, that's a different kind of strength." I scribbled that line down in my notebook and underlined it. Twice. Later that week, a message pinged my phone. It was from Zinnia. No greeting, no warmth. Just, "Mom's not doing well. Maybe you should reach out." I stared at it for a while. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "Maybe she should reach inward." Then I hit backspace. Every letter, gone. Because healing doesn't mean reopening every door you finally had the strength to close. On Friday night, I was sorting through a box I hadn't touched since everything fell apart. Inside, among old report cards and faded birthday cards, I found a photo. It stopped me cold. Marjorie, my mother, holding me as a baby. Her face looked younger, unburdened. She was smiling, not the camera-ready kind, but a smile that looked almost soft, genuine. On the back, in her handwriting, "My little fighter, you changed my world." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat with it. Then, quietly, I placed the photo into my desk drawer, face down. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. That love may have once been real, but it didn't excuse what followed. The next morning, I submitted an application for a college grant. For the first time, it was in my name. Not a custodial account. No family oversight. No forged signatures. Just me. For my personal statement, I titled it, "The Name They Tried to Forget." And I wrote, "I spent years begging for a seat at their table. Now, I'm building my own." That night, I drafted a letter to Zinnia. I didn't send it. Maybe I never would. It read, "You were the mirror they loved to shine. I was the shadow they blamed. But we were both daughters. Just not equals." I folded it, held it for a moment, then slid it into the shredder. It made a soft, final sound as the blades whirred. The act didn't feel loud. It didn't feel triumphant. But it felt like truth. Quiet, steady truth. Because I finally understood. I didn't need to win them back. I just needed to stop giving them pieces of me they never earned. And that was enough. 6 months after everything, after courtrooms and folders and truths too long hidden, I received a package in the mail. No fanfare, just a plain white envelope from the district office, addressed to me. I opened it at the kitchen table with a butter knife, hands steady. Inside was my high school diploma, Eliora Benedict, my full name, legally restored, unedited, I ran my fingers across the embossed seal like it was braille, as if I needed to feel the truth of it. This was more than a piece of paper. It was proof they didn't erase me. Later that afternoon, while cleaning out an old box of journals, I found it again. The photo. The one from years ago, before things became roles and rules. Marjorie holding me, newly born. Her hair tied back in a messy bun. No makeup, just a mother. On the back, in her handwriting, "My little fighter, you changed my world." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. But not from pain. From clarity. I scanned the photo, composed an email, no subject line, no salutation, just the image attached and one sentence. "This was the last time you saw me clearly. I hope one day you ask yourself why." I didn't wait for a reply. I never even checked if it was read. The message wasn't a plea. It was closure. A few weeks later, I made my college essay public. I posted it on a forum that shares stories of family injustice and youth advocacy. Titled it, "The Name They Tried to Forget." I included documentation, receipts, voice notes, screenshots. Not to humiliate, but to educate. The post gained traction. Advocates reached out. Messages poured in. Kids like me. Adults who had survived similar erasures. Professionals who'd seen the same patterns behind closed doors. A local news team contacted Benedict. He declined the interview, but they ran the piece anyway. A segment on legal loopholes used by guardians to silence inconvenient children. Marjorie's name came up, briefly, indirectly, but it was there. For the first time, people didn't just hear about me. They heard me. In early spring, acceptance letters started arriving. Some were from prestigious universities, ones tied to my mother's old college friends, ones that might have helped repair her image. I declined them all. Instead, I chose a quiet liberal arts school across the country. Tucked in a town where no one knew me, where my name had no history, just possibility. Healing didn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It meant building where they tried to demolish. A day before leaving, I wrote one last letter. To Zinnia. "You were the mirror they chose to shine. I was the shadow they blamed. But we were both daughters, just not equals." I folded it, sealed it, and then I burned it in the fireplace. Not out of hate, out of release. I packed my things that night, each item labeled, college forms, books, notebooks, everything with my name on it. My real name. I didn't win back the past. But I walked into my future with the name they tried to bury. Spoken loud, worn proud.